Welcome pre-algebra. We are in lesson 46. We're going to talk about the order of operations with fractions. So far, we have only talked about order of operations problems with those containing whole numbers. But the procedure is exactly the same for fractions and mixed numbers. Unless otherwise indicated, we always multiply and divide before adding and subtracting. So 46.1, let's do that one just to give you an illustration of how this works. If I have 3 over 20 plus 3 over 2, that's a 3. It didn't come out very well. This is a 2. Divided by 5 over 2. All right, so this is our problem, and we know that order of operations tells us that we need to do division before we do addition. And we know in order to do division with fractions, we have to keep it, change it, flip it. So we can rewrite this right away. 3 over 20 plus 3 over 2 times, and we'll flip this last fraction. It'll be 2 over 5. So now we're going to go ahead and perform the multiplication. Now that we have swapped it to multiplication, we're going to perform that first. So 3 over 20 plus 3 times 2 is 6, and 2 times 5 is 10. Now we have two fractions that are being added together. Easy peasy. Except that this fraction and this fraction don't have the same denominator. Now I know that 20 is 2 times 10. 10 is a factor of 20. But I can't reduce 3 over 20 by 2 because 3 is a prime number. I can't reduce it by 2. So instead I'm going to multiply this and bring this denominator up to 20. So 3 over 20 plus 12 over 20 because I multiplied 6 by 2 and 10 by 2. So I basically did this. And we know this is okay because you can multiply any number times 1 and it has the same value. Well, 2 over 2 has the same value as 1. So multiplying any fraction by any number over itself is the same as multiplying it by 1. We're just breaking it into more parts. We're getting that denominator where we want it to be. Now we can perform the math. 3 plus 12 is 15 over 20. And guess what? Now we can reduce this fraction. And the easiest way to reduce is to look at the factors. I know the factors of 15 are 3 times 5, and I know the factors of 20 are 4 times 5. I can reduce by getting rid of the 5's, and my answer is 3 over 4. Voila. Sometimes it's a lot easier to factor numbers. Now we know that we could just divide 5 and 5, right? We could divide the top by 5 and the bottom by 5 and get 3 over 4. But sometimes it's a lot faster and easier for us to just factor than try to go through all the possible numbers that we could divide this by. This tells us right away that we're dividing by 5. And that's what we're doing when we're factoring out the 5's here. We're actually dividing by 5. Because when you factor out, you are dividing. So it's 46.1. Let's do 46.2. Let's see if it's a good hard one to challenge us. See if we can overcome something very difficult. So 5 over 7 minus 1 over 10 times 4 over 5. We know that multiplication comes before subtraction, so we are going to perform that first. 5 over 7 minus 1 times 4 is 4. 10 times 5 is 50, right? So we have got to find some type of common denominator. Here's the thing. When you have a fraction like this, and you can reduce it, especially when you have to find a common denominator, it is always a good idea to go ahead and reduce any fraction that you can before finding that common denominator. So I'm going to reduce this. I know that I can divide 50 by 2, and I know I can divide 4 by 2. So I'm going to divide both of these by 2, right? And I'm not going to keep it, change it, flip it, because it doesn't matter, right? This is the same number over the same number. So I'm going to go ahead and divide. So 5 over 7 minus 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 50 divided by 2 is 25. Now I have a smaller number to work with, and that's going to be a whole lot easier. Instead of having to say 7 times 50, I now only have to say 7 times 25. That's halfway. So now that I have reduced, I am going to multiply this side by 25 and this side by 7. So 25 times 5 is going to give me 125, and 25 times 7 is going to give me 175. And I know that because I think of this in terms of quarters, and I know that it takes 8 quarters to make $2, which is 200. So 7 instead of 8 would be 25 less. So this could be 175. Minus 7 times 2 is 14. And again, 7 times 25, we already know, is 175. So when I do the subtraction here and I take 14 from 125, what I end up with is 111 over 175. And 111 is a prime number. It has no other factors besides 1. So I can't reduce. So this would be my final answer. So think about doing this whenever you have a number or a fraction that can be reduced before you have to find a common denominator. Work smarter, not harder. Reduce those bigger numbers, those bigger denominators, if you can, so that you don't have to multiply by such big numbers. If you don't have to whip out a calculator, then don't. Make it to where you don't have to do that. Use your mind to solve this as much as you can, but do it the smart way, right? You could have just as easily, instead of dividing here, you could have just as easily said 2 times 2 over 2 times 25 and factored out the 2's. That's the same thing as dividing by 2 over 2, okay? You would have still gotten 2 over 25. So if you can't think of the number to divide by, factor it out to help you reduce it. It's going to be a whole lot easier on you. All right, that is all we have for lesson 46. I mean, literally 8 minutes. I will see you in lesson 47.